This episode is sponsored by Molly Morris at M3 Virtual Accounting. If you have an online business or you're just trying to get your personal financials together and you feel that an outside perspective and a fresh eye might be able to help you, definitely check out Molly Morris at m3virtualaccounting.com. At absolutely no charge, she will have a short online meeting with you and just find out what you're looking for, what your needs are, and whether or not she can help you. She has been instrumental in me getting it together every tax season for the past few years. I really, really recommend getting in touch. m3virtualaccounting.com. Tell her I sent you. This is an Unspoiled Network podcast. This is Some Spoiled, a Song of Ice and Fire 2, the co-host Switcheroony, the rereading. In this episode, we are covering A Dance with Dragons, chapters 2 and 3, Daenerys and Jon. And we get to see Daenerys struggling to keep the peace successfully? Not quite. Meanwhile, Jon is having to deal with Stannis, who is rapidly losing his cool. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Monsters are dangerous, and just now, kings are dying like flies.
I am the king!
Fuck the king.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Rashawn.
Oh,
Stannis losing his cool.
Stannis is so heated in this chapter. He is getting really... Look, I know I'm jumping ahead, but I'm just going to say, for somebody who is so concerned with the letter of the law and the approach that is considered correct because of the historical precedent and whatever, he is very quick to be like, just give me castles that are the Night's Watch's castles. And I'm just sitting here like, sir, which is it? Are you going to be the guy who actually is here to help and uphold the traditions of Westeros? Or are you just going to demand shit? Because
you can't be running on a platform of law and order and then be stealing people's houses.
Exactly.
Unless you're the U.S. government. Which Stannis is not, so... There's
a parallel. There's an essay in there somewhere. Some things I feel like you could make happen. But let's back it up here. Let's start with Daenerys and the first sentence of this chapter. She could hear the dead man coming up the steps, and I was like, "Ooh!"
I said, "What the fuck? When was the last time we saw her? What? What is it?" I was so confused. But then it turns out to be something that makes much more sense than what I was thinking. So yes. George Martin, very clever. You're a very clever
sly
boy.
One. You're a very clever boy. Oh, that was brutal. That was so patronizing. God damn, I love it. So yeah, it turns out that she is waiting to see the corpse of an Unsullied who was murdered. Mm-hmm. And this is like, we're getting plunged headfirst into the scenario of an Astapor that is completely at war with itself. And there isn't any sense of like stability to the economy or respect for her rule or even like contentedness among those who were freed from slavery. It's really feeling so tumultuous, and this guy is the latest casualty of that.
This is when we last saw Daenerys, she was liberating, and and you're just kind of like, well, all right, bitch, get in there, clean that shit up, and then
Mm-hmm.
we don't see her for the entirety of the last book, and then we're seeing her now, and she is in the middle of a really messy situation, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's the sort of situation I appreciate George including this, even though again, I think I told you guys ages ago, but the different things that I've been spoiled on, the things that I think I've been spoiled on that may turn out not to be true, there's a lot of that. But
Yeah.
one of the things that I remember people talking about a lot when the show was airing was referencing Daenerys' story in the books and talking about how my interpretation of what people were saying is that somehow George Martin has written himself into some kind of a corner or like a quagmire or something, right? Something he's
Mm-hmm.
done with Daenerys, he's put her in a spot and then couldn't write his way out of it. And I remember on the show, she leaves. I forget how they end up at the arena, but the fighting pits are back, I guess. And I want to say it ends up being a bunch of the harpies in the crowd or something. They all pull these masks out and shit. Yes.
Worst scene, yes.
Right. And then she ends up just flying away, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Like she just leaves everybody and flies away. And I remember people on the internet being like, well, maybe that's what he's going to have to do because how is he getting her out of this shit? And kind of like people were mad, but they were also laughing because it was so ridiculous. So I don't know how much of that is true. The whole Daenerys storyline getting sort of, dead ending or if that's a real thing that happens or not. But all that to say, yeah, he has put her in a very, very complicated situation. And she has come into this land, freed these people. Yet the masters are still around. A lot of them are still quite rich. A lot of the formerly enslaved people had nothing to fall back on because, hello, slaves. So they end up just going back to work for the masters at these really meager wages. And like you mentioned, the economy is no bueno. There's issues with food. There's violence everywhere. Yeah, she got a lot going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really interesting look at how you can't just be like, okay, slavery is over and expect things to work themselves out. There has to be some structure in place to care for people who haven't got anywhere to live. They were being abused, but they were also being housed and fed. And now if they're put in this position where they're supposed to earn money to house and feed themselves and nobody wants to pay them because they've never had to before and they resent it, they could very well wind up starving to death now when they would have been safe before.
Yeah. And the way that spin works and propaganda, the masters and their supporters have spun this to make it seem like the misery in the streets, the poverty, the starvation is Daenerys' fault, that she brought that.
Definitely.
Because the city didn't have those problems before she got there. So they're not even taking accountability for the way that they structured their society. They're like, no, all this terribleness isn't because we were enslaving people. It's because she showed up. And she brought all this with her.
What we had going on was working perfectly adequately to maintain the status quo. And apparently that's what everybody actually wants because there's only two options, which are the status quo or starving to death. So you sort of brought this upon us when, God, this is just it's so real. And essentially, we're going to be getting into the sort of sharecropping shit, which happened in the United States, because this is basically the way that everything unfolded in the South. Slaves were freed, and then they were like, well, now what? And if there's still this societal structure where blacks have no power and they're seen as an inferior class, people aren't going to just hire them for regular jobs, and they don't necessarily they haven't been provided with an education to do other things than what they have been doing their whole lives. And then of course you get into, well, somebody is trying to educate them and their school got burned down. That's so weird.
Yeah, right. And then the insidiousness of these types of arrangements is that it's like, well, you have your freedom now, so taking care of yourself and your needs is your responsibility, even though I haven't equipped you in any way or fashion to meet any of those needs. And but I have a job you can do for a penny a day.
Yes.
And then I'm going to trick you into thinking that this land is, but you can work it like it's yours, but you're going to owe me so much money that you never get out from underneath me. So the penny a day I promised you, you're never actually even going to see, because every time you need to come to the store to buy something, you got to buy it on credit. And, and it just, yeah. So anyway, I don't want to derail us too much, but yeah, kind of like that.
I mean, that's not derailing. That's like the topic. That's so much of what this chapter is. So yeah, this guy, he has this weird wound on his face.
This is awful.
And he was also alone, which apparently there had been an edict about how none of the Unsullied could like patrol alone, but he wasn't patrolling. So it was thought that it would be okay. He was at a brothel, and she's like, why was he at a brothel? Y'all don't have parts. Like, what?
Yeah.
And he says, even those who lack a man's parts may still have a man's heart. This one has been told your servant's stalwart shield sometimes gave coin to the women of the brothels to lie with him and hold him.
Yeah. That is, wow. Just to be,
right?
I remember they incorporated this bit into the show. But yeah, this is heartbreaking in a very specific way. When you think about how the Unsullied become Unsullied, right, and being ripped away from their parents, from their mothers as very young children, often, and then just the sort of brutality that they exist under. The idea that, of course, they will, and like, yeah, to go somewhere for comfort and to be held, and just, yeah, I don't know. I was just, it was really, really moving. And I had forgotten. I mean, I didn't forget. It just wasn't something I was thinking about when this chapter opened, that this was, something that was a thing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that you were going to say something else.
Oh,
no. That. Just like, just me waiting for you to, oh my God.
Nope.
But yeah, I really like after when he says that, it's just her thinking the blood of the dragon does not weep.
Yeah.
Because it definitely gets to her. But yeah, the wound on his face, it turns out, was because they shoved goat genitals down his throat because he didn't have genitals to do it with. So they went and got some.
Like the fucking depravity. Come on. What are we, I mean, and I know that we've seen horrendous behavior and violence and cruelty throughout these books. So I'm not going to do like a whole thing like this is somehow especially
shocking,
horrific compared to all of the shocking and terrible shit we've seen in these books. But there is something about going through the trouble of making sure that you bring goat genitals with you, because you're not going to be able to, castrate this person. And so you want to make sure you have extra supplies in your little fanny pack. Like, I don't even what?
Oh my God.
I just,
Yeah, it's later on when she is coming up with approaches on how they are going to potentially catch this person or people. She is saying like, go find out if there's been anybody going around gelding a bunch of goats lately, which, what a specific thing to have to find out about. And I can't, like, part of me is like, maybe you could just be somebody who is, you geld goats because you are are asked to by the goat's owners, but then you just save that shit and you have like a little side hustle where you're like, look, I'll sell you these goat parts I was about to throw out anyway for 50 cents. And, you know, shit starts to add up after a while. But yeah, so she orders that this man be buried and, you know, washed and treated with great respect. And there comes an interesting question here where she's talking to Barristan Selmy, who says, I fear your eunuchs are ill-suited for the task you set them. And she says, well, they're great warriors. And he says, no, they're soldiers, which aren't the same thing. They are trained to do what they are told to do, but not like, not have critical thinking. That's the opposite, actually. They're supposed to not have critical thinking. That makes a better soldier is somebody who just obeys and doesn't ask any questions. And she says, would knights serve me any better? Not in this, the old man admitted. And your grace has no knights, save me. And she's like, okay, so then what's your fucking point? You want me to send Dothraki? Like, they aren't gonna handle this particularly well either. And we get a moment here where the most crucial task of all she had entrusted to Daario Naharis, a glib-tongued Daario with his gold tooth and trident beard, smiling his wicked smile through purple whiskers. If Daario could convince the Lazarene to reopen the overland trade routes, grains could be brought down the river or over the hills at need, but the Lamb men had no reason to love Meereen. So he's out here trying to negotiate.
Right, it's some diplomatic shit.
Which I'm just trying to like he has his charm, but I feel like it's specific to winning over a teenage girl. I don't know if I see him as being up to this particular task, but okay. I don't. Again, what options does she?
I was just going to say, like, who could she send though? Like, which is I guess funny because you start noticing the gaps in her court, right? And then you start thinking, oh, you know who would be really good at shit like that? Tyrion would probably be really good at that.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I like that. So this is when she says to him, okay, well, this is great talking to you, but now I gotta go put my floppy ears on.
I did not know what the fuck was happening with that. It was such a weird sentence, and I was like, what? She's gonna do her what? And it takes a minute to get the payoff,
Yes.
But when you do finally
later
get it,
on
you're like,
find out.
Yeah,
somebody said if you want to be king of the rabbits, you have to don floppy ears, because she had been about to get rid of like tokars, and those are a type of dress that really emphasizes that you do not have to work because it requires one hand occupied at all times with keeping it in place. And it's a sign of class distinction that she thought, let's just do away with it. And they were like, moo. Like there's you can't just get rid of everything that has ever meant anything to these people. They are not going to love that. Yeah,
it's someone is one of her I don't know what to call them, a counselor, advisor is the one is was Resnack something like
Resnack, yeah.
And he's just like, well, you got to respect their cultural traditions, and you do, but not all of them.
Yeah, you get into some real tricky territory with this sort of thing.
And what's a bummer too is that she's trying to make these concessions, and trying to still remain sort of righteous in her calls that she makes, but there's this feeling, and she ends up articulating it, excuse me, but that nobody seems happy. She says not even the people she freed. Like, everybody is kind of got a bit of an attitude, and she doesn't come out and say ungrateful, but it was kind of nudging up against it a little bit that made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's a sense of just like, one, if you want to be like more generous about it, it's just like, well, what do you want from me? you know, because like I thought I was doing the good thing. But yeah, definitely, I think in her worst moments, how can you be so ungrateful is definitely there.
Yeah.
This whole thing is like just really tough to read because there are no good answers. There's no solution that's jumping out that I'm going, why doesn't she just do this? Which can happen a lot in stories. I'll be like, I feel like just, you know, do XYZ, and it'll either be the character never does that and you're annoyed because of that, or they eventually get to that idea, but it takes so long that you're just like, ugh, I knew we were doing this
pages ago.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like that here. It just feels like she's really stuck.
Yeah. I really appreciated the scenes of her holding court and hearing grievances, because a lot of her judgments I thought were really like well done. I was like, oh yeah, I think that's a good call. I think that's a good call too. Which is really impressive, because we got to keep remembering just how young she is, you know?
Yes.
And this amount of power that she has. I love this. The other thing about the Tokar is that the way it's got to be wrapped around you is very elaborate. And it can't be too loose, but it also can't be too tight. And like you said earlier, it is something that you wear to show that, you know, you don't have to work, because you have to have the one hand, like you mentioned, but also she can barely walk in this fucking thing. She's got to take these tiny little steps, and she's got to be like mindful at every second not to trip over this like fringe that is on the edge that like trails down on the ground.
Annoying. Oh my God.
You know,
I would just lose my mind.
But so she's making these compromises in some areas, right? Letting the Takar stay, wearing one herself, hearing the grievances of not just formerly enslaved people, but masters as well. But it doesn't seem like it's making the kind of difference that she would like to be making. And the other cities, I think it mentions maybe not all of them, but one of the other cities, at least, that she freed is already back to slave trading again. I forget which city it is. Maybe it's Astapor. I'm not sure which one, but one of them places, if not both.
I thought they were in Astapor. Are they in
They're
Marine?
in Marine. They're in Marine.
Maybe it's
now.
Astapor that. Yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
But yeah, but it's so she is out here like on this mission, but she wasn't able to hold it in the other places, and so now she's trying to. I think the reason she's hunkering down is like she realizes that the minute I walk away, they're just gonna fucking do what they've always done, so I have to stay here. But
definitely,
but it wasn't like a long thought out plan for conquering these people, right, and ruling them. She just wanted to free them, so she's having to kind of like do all this on the fly.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's in I don't have any like solutions either. Like, oh, she should just be doing this and it would be settled. I don't really have any either. I mean, except for maybe just killing all of the masters. But then that doesn't do everything either, because with that leaves a vacuum, and we know that sometimes the worst people rise to the top in those types of situations. So some other sort of, you know, charismatic or some sort of strong man or whatever would show up, and God only knows. And then also, while all this instability was happening, who's to say that masters from these other cities wouldn't just roll on in and take over in the absence of the masters who were from Marine? So yeah, I don't know what she should do. I don't know how she gets out of this. So
yeah, there's also like aside even from like the power vacuum that might create, the amount of the number of people looking for very specific revenge against her. People have children, you know, they have families, and that feels like, granted, there's a lot of them already in that place here, but I feel like it would make that a lot worse.
Yeah.
So we get also here this mention of Viserion and the dragons just growing a little bit more restless. And I love this. Rhaegal had snapped at Eerie, and Viserion had set Resnack's Tokar ablaze the last time the Seneschal had called, which I can't be too mad at. maybe he deserved it a little bit. I'm just saying.
Just a little bit, maybe.
She doesn't like Resnack, but she admits that like he has a very specific use, and despite not trusting him, is doing her best to balance using his skills and knowledge with, trying not to entrust him with too many sensitive missions and information.
Right. And he has his own agenda, right? He's the one that keeps like sort of low key proposing, right?
Yes. And he's also like, there's just a real sense of him wanting to keep everything as close to how it was as he can, with the feeling to me of ultimately, I just want to undo what she did, but I'm going to make it like I'm cooperating right now. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, he definitely has energy like, I can manage her. And I think he's probably underestimating her because of her age, right? I don't think he's taking her as seriously as maybe he should be. He's definitely moving as if he thinks he can manage her. And if he could get her to agree to marry him, my God, I don't know exactly what all the rules are in Marine, but I feel like, whenever there's marriage between a man and a woman, there's a sense of ownership that goes along with it in these universes. Sure. So I don't, even though she's queen, if he marries her, like in my mind, it's so funny because this ends up happening to Stannis, right? Trying to apply the rules of where you're from to some other place. Like Stannis is trying to apply the rules of succession to Wildings. Right. Yes. Jon has to keep being like, yeah, no, that's not how it works. Stannis thinks he has the prince, and Jon is like, no. I can't
believe how much he refuses to hear Jon on this too. Like Jon tells him this so explicitly so many times, and then he'll just fucking sail right past it and be like, yeah, well, they'll be happy when they have a new king. And he's like, oh my God, dude.
Starts talking about Val being a princess, and he's like, you guys call her princess. She's nothing but the sister of the woman that used to be with the dead woman that used to be with the old king. That's all she is. But Stannis is, like you said, is just fucking refusing to accept this information. He's just like, yeah, no, that's, I know. But so my point is just about like, if Dany were to get married to this guy, I don't know. Like, I would think by the rules of Westeros, he would be like king consort, right? But maybe in Marine, he would just be fucking have as much, if not more power than Daenerys does.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's worrisome.
But I mean, I don't know if she ends up marrying him or not. I think they had that happen on the show. I don't know if it's the same character, but there was a Marinese guy on the show. And they had them, if they didn't get fully married, maybe they were just engaged before everything popped off. But she like eventually agreed to marry one of them. And I don't know if the character that I'm remembering from the show is the same guy, or if that was an invention for the show, or like they took two characters and threw them together to make the TV show guy. Because she's got sort of like two advisors. She's got this Resnick guy, and then this other guy named Skahaz
Mokandak.
Yeah, and I don't remember her having multiple advisors, but maybe she did. But so I don't know.
They do have a lot of characters smushed together in the show, so it may be that they were combo. Because it simplifies things a little bit.
Yeah, but like I don't know if that's book stuff or if the show just made that up. So I'm curious to see if she ends up actually like marrying or agreeing to marry one of these guys. Because things are dire, and if they keep going down, she might get desperate enough.
I mean, yeah, this is it's part of why marriages like are so important and not romantical. I know that's a made up word.
Romantical.
You know how I mean. And I should also mention, like, we haven't even said the name Sons of the Harpy, I don't think. But that's what they're calling themselves, these guys. Yeah, I think maybe you did mention, because you were talking about them in the show with their friggin' masks. I'll never forget how outraged people were by the fact that it said "kill the masters" in English on one of the walls. Do you remember that?
I do.
People were so pissed, and it did not register for me at all. And then I was like,
I was gonna say, yeah, why was everybody mad?
Because it's supposed to be that they're not speaking English. Like they are though. Like it was one of those. Oh, they're using the common tongue as graffiti when the whole thing is that she can't communicate with a lot of them because they don't speak the same language. And I just couldn't care. You couldn't make me care. But okay.
You couldn't make me care. Oh shit.
But yeah, Resnack comes in. You are so radiant today. I fear to look on you. You are kind to say so. And then here comes Mokandak. And Mokandak is like, so this dude that got killed, what you need to do is tell them all that every time one of your men dies, you are going to kill one of the important men from the great families of the city. And next time, fucking do it. Like, kill both of them.
I'm kind of here for it.
You can guarantee they are not going to try this shit again.
This is probably terrible advice, but I'm here for it, y'all. This is probably the worst thing you can do. Like, you're not supposed, like, violence, like, this is not the way. But also, it might kind of be the way. And I don't know how both things are true.
I have a feeling of this, like, when in Rome, like, there is a language that the people of the city understand. And that is power and violence and, like, domination. And I get you don't want to go that route, but if you are going to get enough power to make things better, I do believe that practically speaking, you got to speak the same language they do at the start. And then work things out through, like, intermediary changes as you go along. So personally, I really do think that she should do this. Like, it's brutal, and I don't know that it wouldn't just make everybody more enraged with her, but there's a part of me that feels like instilling true fear in the hearts of the people who are frankly humiliating your rule every second. I just don't. Do you want to rule or not? Like, how much do you want to keep this seat?
The thing that got me is there's a moment where she's hearing a case of somebody, and there's like a kid, I think, and I can't remember exactly what he wanted, but she wasn't able to give him everything he wanted. And when he walks away, he turns back to look at her, and she says she sees in his eyes that he's a future son of the Harpy. Like, I just made another one, right?
Yep.
And I always think about that sort of thing, like how our actions, especially our violent actions, are just our violence, really. I don't have to say violent actions, but anyway, how that goes towards creating just more violence, right? And how it almost inevitably will come right back to fucking pop you in your own face. And so I struggle because, like, in my heart, right, like, I'm a fuck them hoes rising with but violence is not the answer, son. Or vice versa. You know, but yeah, so I worry about that. Like, I when he says you got to show them a fucking lesson, you got to make them understand that you are not playing games, that you are here for real, that you will be taken seriously, that you will be respected, that you will not have your people murdered like this. He's fucking right. He's right. But then I also know that for every person that they go out and kill, there's going to be somebody who's left behind that's going to just be further radicalized. You know, I don't know.
And like, you're not wrong about that, but these people are already rising up against her. So it's sort of like, if you don't find a way to quash this now, you're just going to straight up lose. This isn't about just governing. It's about putting down an imminent rebellion.
Yeah.
That's just like fomenting, you know? So I don't know. It feels like, again, how bad do you want to stay where you are?
Yeah, this is why it's a complicated situation she's in, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just one of the reasons why, you know. And then it also like for me personally, I can't speak for you, but for me personally, I'm more willing to the parts of me that are like, yeah, you absolutely should fuck these families up. Like the part of me that's like, do that, it's on 100, is the part of me that is siding with Dany because she has freed all of these people, right? And that these people who live in Marine are the bad people because they're the slaveholders. And yes, they are the bad people because they're the slaveholders. But I'm empathizing with Daenerys, right?
Right.
But Daenerys is coming from some other land, and she is swept in, and she has done what I think is the right thing by destroying the fucking institution of slavery in this country. But now she's also, like you said, she plopped down and she's ruling. And I don't know. I got squicky. I just got some squick around it, you guys. Can't fully articulate it, but there's some squick.
No, I get it. And that's a really valid point. Just like, all right, well, you just decided to come in here and completely uproot the way of life of a foreign people that you have no real rights to do this. There's no legacy here. Your legacy is in Westeros, and you're literally telling us you're treating this place like a test run. And there is a real sort of quality to that. And the number of times that people of color have been used for test runs of various things that white people want to do has not got an awesome track record.
And like,
granted, her intentions are much better than those.
Exactly.
But,
I don't want people to misunderstand me. I don't have any respect for an idea of a culture that is built upon slavery of any kind of people. So I'm not saying that particular part of their culture needed to be respected. I don't think that it did. Smash them, change 100% here for it. But there is, like to your point, that she's on her way somewhere else. This isn't even the fucking prize, right? This is just some shit she's doing on her travels, and she's trying to get to what is actually important to her. And she showed up with no real plan and no infrastructure in place. And now, scrambling, trying to maintain her bit of control before this whole thing just completely explodes,
yes.
She's just in a very, very challenging position, as I guess just the way to sum this whole conversation up, which is basically
it's a really interesting look at the argument of like, yeah, they have slavery, it's very bad, but why don't you mind your own business? Which you don't want to be taking that position. But also,
God, no.
like, is this gonna actually do any good? Is just trying and maybe failing and dying potentially worth trying? I think a lot of people argue yes.
Yeah, I would argue yes. I would definitely argue yes. I just but what happens after you do that is just as important. I think is really my main point here. It's what you do afterwards. And I think she got that lesson because she's choosing to stay, unlike she did in Astapor. Like, she learned a valuable lesson there, that it can't just be a single assault and then I show up and say, you're free now, and then I bounce. There's got to be other shit. So now she's in that phase of this experiment. Okay, so I did the first part. Now I got to stay and figure out how to do the second part. And fuck, the second part's real hard. God damn. Yep. This shit's tedious as fuck. It's super hard. And like, I don't know who I can trust, and nobody is happy. And you know what I mean? Like, I kind of low-key see why they had her just fly away on a fucking dragon on this show.
Yes. It's kind of fun because it's like, reminds me of everyday life and how much I want things to just be like a montage where you have a sudden realization about how you need to change your life. And then the next day, all of your behavior changes and it's a montage of you just succeeding. But then actually what it is just every single day you have to choose to do the harder thing and maintain focus on what you ultimately want, even though none of the changes you're making seem to be paying off right now. Like, it feels sort of futile in the moment sometimes, and the changes that do occur are so incremental that almost nobody notices. Like that, it's just like there's something about seeing the work of this that is impressive, but also there's a dread in it, just like, oh fuck. But anyway, let's get to the people who are coming to her to speak with her. So first, there's a guy who is here on behalf of Cleon the Great, who she calls the Butcher. And he has sent her some lovely leather slippers, which are far too small. And he wants to marry her. He said, the time has come for Astapor and Marine to end the savage reign of the wise masters of Yunkai, who are sworn foes to all those who live in freedom. Great Cleon bids me tell you that he and his new Unsullied will soon march. And she thinks to herself that new Unsullied are an obscene jape. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so Astapor is not back under slave rule. This Cleon is ruling in Astapor. So
I'm going to see what we've got here in the notes from Austin.
But this guy does say that the masters of Yunkai are still ruling. Checking the notes, Austin's Info Corner.
Austin's Info Corner. We didn't mention about how Shakes Mokandek has shaved his head, and all of his followers have as well, which is kind of a big deal because it's like extremely stylish for the men to twist their hair into wild shapes and dye them all kinds of colors. So the fact that he is like completely shaved his head is a real statement.
That's saying he's all in, right? He's all in,
very much so.
And he's also the one that's like, we need to kill these motherfuckers. So he's on brand for him.
So Austin says Astapor has had a full circle revolution with the freed slaves enslaving the former masters. And in Yunkai, the masters have retaken control and restarted the slave trade. Okay. So thank you very much, Austin, for giving us a little simple tidbits about how that's going. See, so easy to lose track of things in the mix. But yeah, his new Unsullied are an obscene jape, and I'm just like, it has not been that long. Like, Unsullied take a full 10 years to train, and
I feel like that's a very generous estimate.
Agree.
Because you're talking about like, you're snatching them from infancy to like a year or two and 10 years. They're not worth anything until like 13 or 14, right? 15 maybe.
I would say, yeah. Here it is. The Butcher King had restored slavery to Astapor, the only change being that the former slaves were now the masters and the former masters now the slaves. If I had just read like one paragraph further, my question would have been answered. So here she comes with her, I'm only a young girl and know little in the ways of war, which is a line she starts to use a lot. I'm only a young girl and know little in the ways of economics. I'm only a young girl and know little in the ways of, whatever. But we have heard Astapor is starving. Let King Cleon feed his people before he leads them out to battle. And she waves him away. And this guy does leave without an argument, which I kind of expected him to try and press his case further, but he does not do that.
Yeah. We also know that this is the 6th time he's come and like proposed marriage, so this is probably routine. He comes, he does the thing, she says no, and then he's like, all right, I'll see you next week.
Yep. Yep, very much so. So then we have Hisdar Zolorak. a tall man, very slender, with flawless amber skin. He bowed on the same spot where stalwart Shield had lain in death not long before. He's a wealthy merchant and has a lot of kin around, and he's incredibly rich and like to grow richer if I grant his petition. When Dany had closed the city's fighting pits, the value of the pit shares had plummeted. His Darza Lorak had grabbed them up with both hands and now owned most of the fighting pits in Meereen.
But nobody can fight in them because she's got this new rule that is done.
Yep.
I love how these people come over and over to ask for the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she straight up says, oh my God, dude, how many times are we going to do this? Like, what is this? This the fifth time? And he's like, well, this will be the sixth time. So, have you brought new arguments? Old arguments, his Dar admitted. New words, lovely words, and courteous. And I love her just being like, yeah, that's not the part that bothered me. It wasn't that you chose the wrong words, sir. It's the whole thing that you fucking want to do, which is reopen this horrific thing. I have not changed my mind.
I love that she makes the argument for him. She's just like, I know what you're going to say so well, I could just do it myself. And then she just does. And he's like, you did a really fucking good job.
He's like, wow, you've really won me over.
I am quite persuaded. But her answer is again, no. And this is another one of those things too, those arguments about respecting our culture. And you got to give us this. He also talks about how good it is for the city. You know, how it brings money and tourists in and all that kind of shit. And she's just not having it. She's not having it. And he's like, well, what about, you can even make money. Like, we can tax shit.
Yes.
And she has a moment where she thinks to herself, well, if I was going to fucking reopen this, I would fucking take a tax out of the gross. I'm not waiting for the net. Fuck out of here. Yeah, I already learned that lesson.
Oh my God, the expenses just keep going up exponentially every month, and now there's nothing left. How mysterious.
Yep.
It's a real recipe for getting ripped off. And she has a moment here where she's sort of like, oof, if I need to marry anybody, this dude would probably be the fucking one. Like, he's not horrible looking. And he has connections with stuff, and he's got money. Maybe this is worth thinking about. But I will mention, like, that's not why he's here. He's not proposing, and he is not mentioning marrying her. So she's just like pulling this out of her druthers closet.
I just love that she is just working under the assumption, and it's probably accurate, that she could just marry whoever the fuck she wants.
Very much so. Like, I fully believe that she can do what the fuck she feels like. So let's see. The next person is Grazdan, a cousin of the Green Grace. What he desired turned out to be gold. Dany had refused to compensate any of the great masters for the value of their slaves, but the Meereenese kept devising other ways to squeeze coin from her. The noble Grazdan had once owned a slave woman who was a very fine weaver. And now there are these younger slaves who have learned how to weave from this really talented woman and opened their own shop and are making money. And he wants a cut of their shit because they wouldn't know how to weave if he hadn't bought them at auction and let them learn. This is some of the realest, most audacious shit.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's something else. It is really something else. He feels he is owed because he is guaranteed a right of return on his investment. And he feels like he got robbed. Yes. I invested. I spent money paying for these girls. I knew that my master weaver was old and was going to die, and I didn't want to lose that money. So I put in to, get these girls trained. And how dare they then turn around and use that to make money for themselves and not cut me in? Like, who do they think they are? And what ends up being the judgment is that he actually has to go and buy them new looms, the best that there is to be bought, you know. And she punishes him with something else too, and says, and that's for not remembering the slave's name, because she asked him what is his weaver's name, and he doesn't know it.
Yes. He's like, oh, I don't know. She died like 6 years ago. I've had a lot of slaves. It's like Elsa or Ella, something like that. And from you, the girls should get a new loom. And yeah, that's the punishment.
Oh, that is?
Here's our ruling.
Okay.
From the girls, you shall have nothing. It was Elsa who taught them weaving, not you. From you, the girls shall have a new loom, the finest coin can buy. That is for forgetting the name of the old woman.
Right. Yeah,
my question is, how do they enforce this? Like, does she have like people who were witness to the ruling follow him out? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know.
I'm really curious about that.
Maybe he has to come back and do it in front of her, or I don't know. Maybe they get the information before he leaves, and then she sends somebody to check with the ladies that weave to see if it actually happened. I'm not sure. But this is what's his face? Resnick had like a list of people that he was introducing that were, waiting to have an audience with her. So they have a sort of clerical system in place. It's very easy to take some names down, before people are dismissed fully from the hall. Get some like follow-up information, some contact info, some digits. I don't know, something.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So then next one, a rich woman whose husband and sons had died defending the city walls. During the sack, she had fled to her brother, and when she returned, found her house had been turned into a brothel with the whores wearing her jewels and clothing. She wants her house and jewels back, but says they can keep the clothes. Dany granted her the jewels, but ruled the house was lost when she abandoned it. And that feels fair to me. It sucks, but,
What is it? Possession is nine. What is it? Possession is 9 tenths of the law, or whatever that thing people like to say.
Exactly.
I don't know how accurate it is. It's just, I don't know. Is it 9 tenths of the law? I really don't know.
I genuinely think that's not true.
It feels weird, right?
Also have nothing to back that up with. So
because it says of the law, but like which law? We got a lot of them. Which law are you talking about? I don't know. I don't know. I might Google that later. I'm curious.
And then a former slave to accuse a certain noble. The man had taken to wife a freed woman who'd been the noble's bed warmer before the city fell. And basically, this noble raped this girl and got her pregnant. And now this girl's getting married, and he wants compensation for having to raise the child of another man. And
once the guy
Daenerys, right? Yes. And Daenerys is like, yeah, I know this sucks, but she was like, according to the law, his property at the time. So there wasn't a rape, because that wasn't how things were set up when that happened, which sucks. I see where she's coming from, but I do not like it.
Yeah.
And he doesn't either.
She gives him the money, but doesn't let him get the revenge that he wants. And she had done a thing, because I don't know if it's here or if it's earlier, but somebody comes to her and they want, or something happens that makes Dany have to explain to us, the reader, that one of the first things she did was basically pardon all the slaves that, committed acts of violence as the battle was happening, right? A lot of them raised up and killed their own masters. And so she just gave everybody, like, what do you call it? Clemency. I don't know if clemency applies because they haven't actually been in prison, but she, immunity to being charged or whatever. But at the same time, she understands that if I start arresting and charging and trying and punishing every master that engaged in all of this depraved behavior, I will be prosecuting everybody in the city practically. It'll never end. It'll just never end. At some point, I can't go and avenge every atrocity, because that's just not practical, right? Like, as much as we want it to be true, it's not practical. And like we discussed earlier, I don't know how helpful that actually is to trying to raise people up. So, but this dude is not, like you said, he is not pleased with this verdict. He's not satisfied.
So then a young boy, and his parents were killed by the slaves in the household when they rose up. And his mother was raped as well before she was murdered. And he escapes, and one of the murderers is living in the house now and is like taking claim of it. The other had joined the queen's soldiers as one of the mother's men. He wanted them both hanged. Dany had no choice but to deny him. She had declared a blanket pardon, and she wouldn't punish slaves. So this boy is the one that walks away, and she sees in his eyes the harpy has another son. Mm-hmm. And this I felt like it, like, again,
he also lunges
like you're saying,
at her. This is the one that lunges at her, but trips over his get up. What the fuck? Tokar. Trips
get
over
up
it.
Is fine. I feel like that's valid.
It ends up like face planting right in front of her. And, he almost cost himself his life because Belwas was Johnny on the spot. He was right there.
It says the eunuch yanked him up one-handed and shook him like a mastiff with a rat. Oof. Evocative.
Right. So she ends up, letting him go and not taking his head off, which could have been what happened for coming at her like that. And she tells him to be real fucking thankful that you tripped, because that probably saved your fucking life.
Yeah.
And even after her sparing his life, he still gives her that look of hatred, and then that's when she has the thought of that the harpy has another son. So that, I just think it's important to think that, like, that look, like, what she does by sparing his life does not change anything about how he feels about anything.
Yes.
And I think that is kind of a small sort of example of the larger thing she's sort of running into, which is she saved these people's lives. Yes. And that's real, and that's important. That's a big fucking deal. However, it is not necessarily changing the way any of these people see her if she can't help them with the things that they feel like they need from her in order to be the ruler that they want to, like, fall behind. Yeah.
So this is when she starts to just be like, oh God, I'm getting really tired. Like, it's been a long day. Nobody's happy with her rulings. Everything is just kind of a slog, honestly. A sculptor comes and wants to replace the head of the harpy in the plaza with a sculpture of her head, and she's like, no, I'm good, thank you. A pike of unprecedented size had been caught, and the fisherman wished to give it to the queen. She admired the fish extravagantly, rewarded the fisherman with a purse of silver, and sent the pike to her kitchens. There's something about that I just love. It makes me feel like little kids. Like, they just are like, oh, we just got the biggest fucking fish. Oh my God, we got to bring it to mom. She is not going to believe this, mother. Look at our fish. Like, I don't know. I just really, really enjoy this. A coppersmith had fashioned her a suit of burnished rings to wear to war. She accepted it with fulsome thanks. It was lovely to behold, and all that burnished copper would flash prettily in the sun. Though, if actual battle threatened, she would sooner be clad in steel. Even a young girl who knew nothing of the ways of war knew that. So, there are 23 people left. And she is like, oh God, I just do not want to do this. But all of the people that are waiting apparently are, let's see, the Shona saw 1 calf and 3 goats. The rest will be sheep or lambs. And she's like, it's so weird that ever since we said we'd pay for the sheep my dragons killed, so many sheep have died. It is wild.
Right? I mean, what a coincidence. What a huge coincidence. And she decides that she's going to see everybody today and she's going to pay what she said she'd pay, but she wants them to make it known that going forward, y'all going to have to go and swear to God and take an oath that that's what really happened before I pay you anything. And I'm curious that this is a religious enough society that having to swear in front of their God that they really did lose a sheep would be enough of a deterrent, because these people are living in some significant poverty right now. I feel like that is a very easy lie to tell, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's something that, with me not really like taking oaths in general seriously, I always wonder how much does this actually deter people? And it must, but it's hard for me to understand that.
I mean, you could just swear all kinds of shit. Who's gonna what's gonna happen if you break it? Not that I go around breaking my promises, but I mean, literally, what do you think is gonna happen? I guess something's gonna strike you down. Is that what we think is gonna happen? I don't know.
They'll catch up with you in the afterlife. I think that's the main one, right?
Yeah,
it's just like, well, I don't want that smoke when I'm supposed to be enjoying my portion of heaven.
Right. I will say that there's a case to be made for if you go around just being a liar who lies, that eventually that energy will make its way back to you, right? So I'm not trying to be all like, oh, there's no consequences. But I'm talking about the immediacy of swear to me right now that you would, that your goat was eaten. And you got a hungry family to feed and you haven't eaten in days. Yeah, I'm going to swear that shit.
Right.
Oh, you should have seen him. It was horrifying. He swooped right out of the sky. I didn't know which way to run. It was fire everywhere. I'm just.
I don't know why that. So you should have seen him. That got me. So these guys are, there's a suggestion of maybe we could just whip them and tell them to get the fuck out. And she's like, I'm not going to do that. I don't want everybody afraid to come to me with information and stuff. So no. And there is the first one to come in. Resnack tells them as a group, she has consented to compensate each of you. Present yourselves to my factors and you shall be paid in coin or in kind as you prefer. And they just don't seem at all pleased. And she's sort of like, what else do they want? Why are they so pissed still? This is what they came for, I thought. And then this guy steps forward.
Everybody leaves. The rest of them fucking leave. And one guy just hangs around. And they're like, what the fuck is that guy still doing here? We're done. We said we'd pay you. Go fucking get in line. And yeah. He held a bad claw.
This got to me so bad, you guys. He stood with his head down, gazing at the marble floor as if he had quite forgotten where he was. And when she asks him to approach, when he raised his head, his eyes were red and raw as open sores. Dany glimpsed Sir Barristan sliding closer. The man approached in a stumbling shuffle. And she thinks, is he drunk or ill? And she's like, burnt bones? Is that what you brought? And before she can say anything else, he dumps them out. And she instantly sees them and begins to kind of freak out. Resnack is not picking up on what's happening here. And starts to be like, dude, we just said. And Barristan has to be like, shut up. Look, that's not this. And it ends with, Dany thought, those are the bones of a child.
Yeah.
I don't know why this hit me so much more this time. But
did it really?
The parent being standing there and being so lost seeming, and he's stumbling and she's like, is he drunk or ill? And it's he is in such deep grief still. This probably just happened. That he is in that weird fugue state you get into when something really awful has happened and you aren't registering the world around you.
Yep. Know it. Been there. Yeah. Yeah. That's a really weird thing. So hard to describe it, right? And then
Yeah.
like and then afterwards, like for me, it was, when my dad died, it was probably one of the most recent ones, not the first time, but probably one of the most significant ones. And I don't have much memory of that first day.
Yeah.
It's like, like I remember getting the call. I know I ended up at my aunt's house. I don't have a car. I have no idea how I got there. I don't remember. But it would have required several transfers of bus to train to bus. You know what I mean? I have no memory. I have no memory of how I got there. My next memory is just that I'm at her house. No idea the time or anything. It's so strange. It's just like, yeah, it's weird. Brains are weird.
So yeah, there's just something about the description of him here. Like, the fact that all of the other men too were just glaring. They definitely knew what had happened and were not responding the way that she wanted them or expected them to, because the actual main issue hadn't yet been addressed. And like, what do you do to compensate this person? What they had said was, we'll give you money or we'll give you more sheep to replace the ones you lost.
Mm-hmm.
This is a kid. What do you do? Pay him? Like, how hideous.
I do have a question about? So like, there's 23 people, right? And what's his face knows the breakdown, except for the bit where he's just like, and the rest will be sheep or lambs, no doubt. So I don't, like, as he was getting his count of, or whomever was doing that, right? I don't know where his information is coming from, but how is the fact that one of these bags has children's bones in them, or the bones of a child in them, how does that not make it to his list, and why? If all of these people came with this father for this reason, that's what I don't understand. You know what I mean?
Oh, I don't necessarily think they came with the father for this reason. I think they came for their own reasons and then like heard what had happened while they were waiting and were like, oh, this is worse than we even knew. But as far as like, him having specifically 1 calf and 3 goats, the rest will be sheep or lambs, no doubt. My assumption here, and I'm pure inventing this, so I will cop to that, but was like, we are going to ask specifically, did anybody lose any cattle? Anyone? Raise your hand if you lost cattle. Okay. Goats. Anybody lose goats? Okay, we got 2 goats over here. All right. And then the rest of you, we'll deal with you as a group. And they're just not asking about anything else. You know what I mean? They're just singling out different types.
That okay. That feels okay. Yeah, I'll take that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then coupled with the fact that, this father is so, grieving so hard that he's barely able to speak, it makes sense that he would just sort of be standing there dazed while all that was happening. Just standing there, waiting for his turn to talk, So, all right. Yeah, I'll allow it.
So, next we've got Jon. And start things off in a wolf dream.
Yeah, how about that?
How about that? Indeed. What do you think?
So he wakes up with a memory of this dream, which I was like, word? And then in the dream, he's like with his pack, but he knows where what's happening with everybody by what's going on with this pack, which is I don't know, like he's right about, well, he's wrong, but he's right. He thinks that Summer and Shaggy Dog are still alive, but is still operating under the impression that Bran and Rickon are definitely dead.
Yes.
And to explain that, he's just like, I wonder if a little bit was left over in them.
Yeah.
And I was a little disappointed by that, you guys. I don't know why. I don't know why I think Jon Snow should know more than that. I guess maybe I'm thinking because he did spend some time with wildlings and with fucking, even though they were not close, they were not friends. But, you know, I would have thought he would have soaked up a little bit more of the lore behind this. But he doesn't seem to connect the idea that if he's able to reach them in his wolf dream, then maybe they're still alive. But and then what was there something else that I wanted to mention about this too? Oh, I can't remember, so I won't hold this up, but it might come to me in a minute or two.
Okay. But yeah, so there's this moment. 4 remained, and one the white wolf could no longer sense. Snow, the moon insisted. There's something about the moon insisted is so surreal a line. I don't know really what to think of that. The white wolf ran from it. And I'm assuming that's ran from the moon? Do you think?
I mean, maybe. Why?
I don't know. When the wind blew along the ice, no fur could keep the chill out. On the other side, the wind was colder still, the wolf sensed. That was where his brother was, the gray brother who smelled of summer. Snow. An icicle tumbled from a branch. The white wolf turned and bared his teeth. Snow. His fur rose, bristling, and the woods dissolved around him. Snow! 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 And it turns out that this is a raven that is attempting to get his attention. This raven is yelling at him.
Yeah, this fucking raven, Mormont's raven, y'all, he is a real pain in the ass.
He's mouthy as hell. Oh my God. Yeah, he's just like, I demand to be fed. And I love later on, he says like, Dad, Dad. And he's like, oh, you like that word way too fucking much, bro. Like, I'd not care for it.
And this fucking thing lands on his chest and is yelling in his fucking face. It's
in his face. Like, truly, the fucking nerve. And this is when Dolores Ed comes in.
Yeah, and he comes to get him for breakfast. This is fucking Ed. My God. Never change.
He asks what Jon wants for breakfast. Jon says roast raven. The raven had said corn, corn, corn. So he says, okay, 3 corns and 1 roast raven. That's all well and good, except Hob has made boiled eggs, black sausage, and apples stewed with prunes. The apples stewed with prunes are excellent, except for the prunes. I won't eat prunes myself. Well, there was one time when Hob chopped them up with chestnuts and carrots and hid them in a hen. Never trust a cook, my lord. They'll prune you when you least expect it. You, all sir, of that for get out of here.
I was a lot of work for that pun.
They'll prune you when you least expect it. So Jon asks, has there been trouble with the stockades? And he says, not since you put guards on the guards. Which is pretty grim.
Yeah, it turns out that they have about 1,000 people that they're holding captive, and there are a lot of women. And the other men at the wall, don't know how to behave with all these women around. And it's a real fucking bummer.
Yep. They are who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And he has had to make sure to put people in place here.
Yeah, and then like, who's watching the people? What is watching the people? This shit just goes on and on and on.
That's the question.
And they have people still are coming up to Castle Black because they don't have anywhere else to go. You know, wildlings are just like, we surrender. And meanwhile, that battle was a minute ago. What do you mean surrender?
Right. Yes.
That's done. We're over that. But there's nowhere else for them to go. There's no leader. There's nothing, set up anywhere. Again, no infrastructure, no plan B's and C's and D's. So people don't know where to go. And okay, I guess we'll just go back to these people because they have shelter and food at least. At least even as a prisoner, you know, at least I'm getting fed and getting sheltered. You know, it's I don't want to say it's similar to Danny's situation, but I think that there are some parallels that could be drawn as far as like, what do you do with a population that doesn't have really a lot of their own to stand on, and they don't like you. They know you don't, you know, there's no sort of pretense of anything. There's just, they don't have any other options but to come here and hope you can help them in some way. And Jon, again, also another one in charge and super, super young, you know, and now is in this position of being responsible and having to make some really fucking hard decisions.
Yeah, this is a lot for people of his and Daenerys' ages. They are very young still. So yeah, Jon says, was the mother questioned? Aye, but all she knows is that she ran off during the battle and hid in the woods. We filled her full of porridge, sent her to the pens, and burned the babe. Because the child was dead and they have to burn them now. Which, that's pretty awful. And he's thinking about how he's gotten to be used to the fact that they have to burn dead children. But it's then like, they still want to burn live ones, though. I can't get with that. Live? That's different. I'm like, yes, it is. Yes, it is, sir. So he does his ablutions and gets himself. I love there's a moment where the raven is by the window and is like quirking at him to come and open the window shutter. And he's like, you know, you don't run me. But then he just comes over and opens the window shutter because, yes, he does, Jon. That Raven is mostly in charge. Let's all be real about this. And he goes out into the yard and he comes across a couple of boys sparring with each other. And one of them is really particularly not good at this. And he thinks to himself how, like, maybe we could make him into a steward or something. I appreciate that that's his immediate thought instead of like, oh, this is pathetic. We've got to get him better at sword fighting. He's like, he's clearly afraid of even getting hit. Like, this is not for him. And I like that, you know?
Yeah, same. And this little kid, too, though, it like pops back up and is still trying. Jon gives him some advice. And, with a little kid that's not very good is named Hop Robin.
Yes, and I think he has a club foot, so that's why they call him that.
Oh yeah. You're right. Oh yeah, but he seems just very adorable, and he's just like, I'll try harder next time.
So he's being hailed by somebody. Boy, you there, boy. And Jon doesn't do the whole like, you will address me as. He just doesn't pay attention. He keeps walking. And it's just like, you're going to fucking call me boy. You're not getting a response out of me. And finally, they say, Lord Commander, and he stops. And this dude comes over who is like, well, seems like you're really doing nothing with that fine-ass sword you've got there. Really should put that to use, unless you're too much of a pussy. And Jon is like, dude, I have a meeting to get to. I do not have any interest in this. You fear. I see that. Sir Godric grinned at his friends. He fears, he repeated for the slow ones.
That for the slow ones really took me out. I fucking that really, really got me. Damn.
Oh my god. I love a bully who isn't even good at bullying. Like, he doesn't even have a captive audience. He's got to hold him by the hand and be like, look at me being a good bully. Do you see it? Oof. Grim. So he just turns and walks away. And as much as I'm like, that is the right thing to do, I also am like, please kick his ass, Jon. Please just go ahead and fucking show him. I know that's not the energy you need to be carrying when you are in this position, but also maybe you need to carry it a little, just a tiny
I mean, this guy is walking around calling himself Godry the Giant Slayer. And the Queen's men, which I got a question about that, had taken a call on him Godry the Giant Slayer because supposedly that's something that he did. And I don't even know if I believe it. It says that he did it. It says Sir Gondry had slain a fleeing giant. It says it. It doesn't give me any reason to doubt it. And yet here I am being like, did he though? Did he? I don't know if he really did or not. I don't know why, but I feel like I don't believe it.
Listen, a guy who has this kind of vibe, I'm not believing shit that comes out of his mouth about his fighting prowess. Like, no. He walks away and heads up to the King's Tower. 2 Queen's men stood shivering on the steps, their hands tucked up into their armpits. These cloth gloves will never serve, Jon told them. See Bowen Marsh on the morrow, and he'll give you each a pair of leather gloves lined with fur. And they're like, thanks. Hopefully we will still have hands by tomorrow.
The Queen's men, are they talking about Selyse?
Yes.
Who the Queen's men are? Okay.
Yes.
That was just kind of throwing me off. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, why is there a difference? But I guess because her family comes from someplace else, they have a different banner and all that jazz. So,
well,
I guess
really what it's about is that she has completely gone over to the Lord of Light worship. So she's like fully a follower of R'hllor now.
Okay.
And the people that are considered like her men are also much more devout in that direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would expect better behavior from that bunch then.
Why?
I don't know. Being all devout and shit. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a real question too when you get down to it with things like this. Like, how much are you actually devout and how much are you just doing what seems expedient for your ambitions or whatever, you know? So he runs into Sam and it's such a jarring moment.
I was so disoriented, you guys. Sam Tarly, what? And then I was like, oh, wait, that's right. And this is probably one of the most jarring so far at the beginning of starting this book. Like, having this moment really caught me off guard, even though I should have been fully prepared for it. The other ones weren't as bad because we didn't have really anybody interacting with someone that I had just spent a lot of fucking time with, you know?
Yes.
But then, I was fucked up for just a second. Wait a minute. And I thought to myself, how did Sam get all the way back to the wall? And why wasn't that? And I was like, oh, wait, no, he hasn't left yet. Oh, man.
You thought this was the TV show for a second where everybody can fucking just like.
I was tuning out for a second.
And yeah, Maester Aemon is still alive also. So he's saying he sent me with a letter. How did Stannis take it? Not happily by his face. I'm not supposed to speak of it. Then don't. Jon wondered which of his father's bannermen had refused King Stannis homage this time. He was quick enough to spread the word when Carhold declared for him. And as he mentions later, the Karstarks don't really have a whole lot of choice now. Because they went ahead and turned their back on Robb, but they also had fucked the Lannisters up. So what the fuck else were they gonna do? And it's very unsurprising they threw in. But nobody else is really feeling that way.
Nobody else has. And it is just insult after insult after insult. And when Jon finally does make it up to Stannis, we find out that the most recent person to tell him to go fuck himself is Lady Mormont, the baby.
Oh.
And Stannis cannot believe that a little girl has got the nerve. And I'm just like, yes, she does have the nerve. But yeah. She's just like, nah, there's only one king to me, and that the only king in the north is going to be a fucking Stark, and you could just get on out of here with all this nonsense. And Stannis is like, but she's 10. What the fuck? First of all, why is she in charge? There's got to be other daughters, right? Right?
This I love, and the wording of it. Bear Island knows no king but the king in the north, whose name is Stark, and Stark is capitalized in all caps. And there is just a real sense of like they gave him the finger as they wrote that. You could feel it, you know.
Like that's what she sealed the letter with. It wasn't with a ring. It was an impression of her middle finger dipped in wax.
Her middle finger.
She sealed it.
Girl, did you get a manicure? Look at that nail. So yeah, he tells Jon, like, don't tell anybody about this. Just gonna keep letting them know about the Karstarks. I will not have your brothers trading tales of how this child spat on me. Yeah. And then we have Jon thinking to himself, the eldest daughter had joined the young wolf's host as well. Even if both of them had died, Lady Mage had other daughters, some with children of their own. Had they gone with Robb as well? He did not understand why Lyanna should be writing Stannis, and could not help but wonder if the girl's answer might have been different if the letter had been sealed with a dire wolf instead of a crowned stag, and signed by Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell. And then he has to be like, ugh, shut up, dude. You made your choice. Yep. Knock it off with this like second guessing of everything.
Yep. And then Stannis makes sure to mention this same thing every 60 seconds for the rest of the
God. Oh my God, he cannot let it go.
At some point, he's like a dog with a bone or some shit like that. Like, he will not let that fucking insult die. Like, he is going to make sure he reminds you how you played in his face every chance he gets. And Jon is, meanwhile, like, can you heal? So we can move past this. We have other shit to talk about.
Move on, please. Can you heal? 100%. I have somebody I could recommend for you. So let's see. Basically the essence of this chapter is nobody wants to fuck with him. He is extremely bitter about it. And there is I don't know how much of the call that he is putting out for support is there are others and they are real and they are coming, and how much of it is I am your lawful king, obey my order. I feel like it's only the second one.
Same. I agree. I 100% agree. Stannis is sending out letters asking people to bend the knee because he is the rightful, lawful king. That's it. And if anything, he's making vague threats about what's to come, but probably framing it in a way that people were just interpreting it as Stannis threatening that he's going to be the one. Ooh,
that's interesting.
Right?
I kind of like that he's trying to be like, the circumstances will be dire. And they're just like, oh, really? Last I heard, you didn't have too many men anymore.
And there's this whole thing that you mentioned earlier too, right? Where he's trying to bully Jon into giving up all of these properties because Stannis wants to use them to reward the people that did like swear fealty or whatever. And Jon is like, you know better. Come on, you know better. You can't install a bunch of Southern lords in these castles here. No. What do you know?
Yeah.
Jon can't believe that he's actually saying this because it's just so, outlandish. And then there's also this thing that, like we joked about earlier, where Stannis really believes that by holding Val and holding the baby, that this is some real fucking leverage. Almost to the point where he's just like, well, when the kid is older and he assumes the throne, like, because, I warned him or whatever, like, he'll be on our side or some bullshit. And I think anyway, that's what that suggested. Because he just refuses to understand that that's not how this works.
Yes.
North of the wall. Like, there's no, that's not a thing. And he really thinks he's standing on something. And it's not, it's third. Believes.
Yeah, it's and like I said, it's really fascinating to me that he can be so fixated on trying to take these properties when the whole point, like, he keeps being like, you guys abandoned them. They have been denied men. They couldn't hold them. Like, what did you think was going, and you are over here continuing to deny men. Yep. So Jon is like, after Jon being incredulous at being even asked for this, he then wants men, and Stannis is incredulous at Jon's audacity in asking for men. And I'm like, that's the whole origin of why shit is how it is that nobody has been willing to help. And all he does is throw it in Jon's face that we saved you guys. But there's not any real connection to the like big picture of, yeah, you did. And that's the first of many battles to come. You are going to see more and worse, and you need to be ready for that. All he is doing is trying to shore up his claim and reward loyal followers so that he can continue to rely on them as allies. They're going to get blue-eyed, sir, quite shortly if you don't fucking handle this.
And Stannis fucking knows this. Right? He knows. I can't get over this. Just the whole time I'm reading this, I'm like, you fucking know better, Stannis. This reeks of a type of desperation that I feel like it's understandable, but I also feel like I'm about to sneeze. Oh wait, no, it went away.
I got so confused. This reeks of a desperation that's like, I'm about to sneeze. And I was like, wait, is this a metaphor? What is...
The feeling was so strong. It was just about to happen, but then it just poof, it went away. But I was like reaching for the mute button, and like, but I have GarageBand up and not Zencaster, so it wasn't there. So I was like, I'm just gonna warn her, but it was for now.
Oh God. Anyway,
fuck, what was I saying? But
you were talking about the desperation of how he's like approaching this,
right? This doesn't it like I'm just like, Stannis, what are you talking about, Stannis? You know that's not how this works. What are you doing? This is like this is like you are like you were saying earlier, like he's like turning his back on all of the values he's supposedly hold so fucking dear, right? He's the only person in the realm that's trying to like follow the rule of law and do things how they're supposed to be done, and everybody else is just out here wilding. And now look at you. And but it reeks of a desperation that he knows he's running out of fucking options. He's running out of allies, and he's running out of time. And he is willing to start walking back some of his own values, which is always, always, always a bad sign.
Yes.
Like it's just
that's a really good point.
Down.
Like that's where you know it's going fucking left is when it starts to be, I'm going to compromise now. Why?
Yep. So yeah, and then I mean, there's some Davos shade.
True,
but
there's a lot like. There's so many mentions. First of all, I just want to point this out as well. Lady Melisandre, I understand that you are loyal to Stannis, but you are not helping. All she's doing, there's this fucking moment here where, in times as confused as these, even men of honor must wonder where their duty lies. Your grace is not the only king in the realm demanding homage. Lady Melisandre stirred. Tell me, Lord Snow, where were these other kings when the wild people stormed your wall? And Jon is like, not here. Okay? I know that. That does not change anything. I am not in charge of telling people who to be loyal to. You don't have to convince me that you helped. We know. But what it comes down to, always, that I wish he would sort of bring up more. The point of the wall is that they don't take sides and shit. That's the whole point. And all Stannis wants to do is get Jon on his side. That's not what they're for. And you're trying to talk about like my rights. Well, if you again give a shit about that, traditionally, Jon is upholding those traditions. That's what he's doing.
Yep.
And I will say later, Melisandre is like, he likes you. Jon's like, really? But I do sort of believe her, because I think there probably is a part of him that admires how Jon is just going to tell him the fucking truth and be like, no.
I think so. I think that's definitely something that's happening. And I think there's also like Stannis is, desperate and willing to compromise and go back on some of his own core values, but there's still parts of him that are just like who he is. And I think those parts of him are the parts that can't help but respect Jon. And those are the parts of him that know Jon is in the right here, that knows that Stannis is asking, what he's asking is inappropriate, is not what the function of the wall is, and he knows he's fucked up. Yeah. But Stannis is so far into this game, he's too far gone. He can't come back from it. There's nothing else for him to do but to continue to try to throw 100% of whatever he has available towards this ambition. He can't just put down arms now and be like, never mind, I'm not trying to be king. That ship has sailed. It's done. They can't go backwards. But so he has to start acting on these other not impulses, but he has to start, I guess compromise is the best word to use, so I'll use it again. He has to start to compromise in order to keep up with this ambition. But there's a part of him that knows, like at one point, Jon says something about Ned Stark, and Stannis has to be like, we were never really close, but he was like a good man. He was like an honorable man. Because that part of Stannis that can't deny those things still exists, like down there.
Yeah.
Because he could have just bullied Jon into like, well, I'll just fucking take the castles. Who's going to check me? And he doesn't. He threatens to do that, right? But he doesn't actually do it in this moment. He doesn't.
Not only does he threaten to take them, but he even says like, "You're only Lord Commander because I'm letting you be Lord Commander," which is such horseshit, sir. Like, and Jon rightfully is like, "No, I'm Lord Commander because I was chosen, because that's how it works." And I just can't get over the audacity that he's like, "I can undo it as easily as I," and I'm like, that's nothing to do with you. This is a completely separate government. This is not how you don't get a say in this,
So I took it. It's funny that you mentioned it that way, because I took it as a threat of force, not a threat of, I could just go in and tell them Jon Snow's no longer your Lord Commander. It's going to be this guy now. I thought that Stannis was like, me and my army can do what we want to do. If you keep fucking with us, like, because Stannis is there with a lot of fucking dudes. He's not just there by himself. It's a lot of motherfuckers there with Stannis, and they're armed. And we met this Godry guy. They're itching to fight. Like, they could do a little something if they wanted to.
Yeah, I guess I see what you mean. I still don't really feel that is what he was saying, but I almost want that to be what he is saying, because otherwise it's so illogical to me.
I mean, otherwise he's completely delusional, right?
which kind of feels like he is, though.
It's tracking, So it could go either way, in my opinion. I think in Stannis's mind, it's probably in the intent of the way it's written. I think it's probably closer to your read than my read. I think for what the story is doing right now, it's probably more accurate that Stannis believes he wields that much like sway that he could just waltz in and announce a new Lord Commander, and everybody would be like, all right, well, it is because Stannis says it is. I think you're right. But how I read it was a threat of force.
Gotcha.
Because the other one just made no sense.
Right? Yes, this is what I was saying. And then there's also like here him being If his grace is doomed, your realm is doomed as well, said Lady Melisandre. Remember that, Lord Snow. It is the one true king of Westeros who stands before you. Jon kept his face a mask. As you say, my lady. Stannis snorted. You spend your words as if every one were a gold dragon. I wonder how much gold do you have laid by? What, sir? What are you? And he's like, yeah, I need to, appease some people with some gold or silver. And I'm like, and how is that relevant to how much they have?
Right.
Just a question.
I mean,
what do you think you get to just take it and pay people? Like,
yes, clearly.
God, he irritates me.
There's a whole thing with Gilly too, where Stannis finds out that she's like kind of told something that she overheard. And
yes,
and Stannis is made aware of the fact that Gilly, because he gets confused. He's like, Gilly's, I thought that was Craster's wife, or I thought it was his daughter, whichever way. But he has to be told she's both, and he's like,
yeah,
this is not King's Landing.
That killed me. That line. I know they put up with some fucked up shit down there, but
and Jon is like, well, don't worry, I'm about to send her away. And Stannis is like, yeah, you should definitely send her away. I can't have an abomination like that or walking around the castle.
Ugh.
Exactly. Ugh. It is not her fault, sir. None of that is her fault. You shut up. You shut up.
And
then when Jon is asking for men,
doesn't he calls her a whore, I feel like, as well.
He says, I thought the wet nurse was Craster's daughter, wife and daughter both, your grace. Craster married all his daughters. Father got her pregnant. And then he says,
here it is.
Oh, wait,
I can find another wet nurse. Yeah, better than whore's milk, which I'm assuming he's talking about Gilly with that. I just can't get over. I truly can't. That people will stay blaming women for their own assault. And I know I should not be surprised, but this makes me very angry.
It didn't take him any time at all either.
Nope.
It was just like, she's what? Oh, boom, done, written off completely.
Yes.
And so Jon is asking also for men to man all these abandoned castles, and Stannis is like, I can't have my men answering and serving your men. Your men are gross. They're criminals. My men are knights. And like, what? I mean, yes. I guess, Stannis.
The thing is, like, the way he's talking about it is so like, oh, that is so inappropriate. But I have to say, probably in practice, they would really not want to cooperate. Like, I want to behave as if this is him being a snob, but the truth of how it would work if he attempted this is probably going to align with his attitude here. They would all be very resentful of being ordered around by people they considered far below them in birth.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess
that's my assumption. I may be wrong, but
there's a difference between like knights and soldiers. So I guess it depends on who exactly Stannis sent. You know, if he's just sending the bannermen of various, like, I don't want to, I'm trying to, like, the lowest level of the men that are following him, not necessarily knights or men in charge, then maybe it wouldn't be as bad. But or maybe it would be worse. I mean, sometimes that shit can be even worse. Like, because if you're of a class that's like just a little bit better than someone else, you can take that and really do way too much with it. Sometimes that's worse.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it could go either way. See, I thought Jon's like, I mean, but Jon needs they need bodies. They got to come from somewhere.
Yes. That's what is at the bottom of all of this, is everything in the long game, the big picture, comes down to you are all going to die if you don't get your shit together. The whole country. But much like our present circumstance with facing climate change, nobody is taking the long view. They do not care. That is some shit for somebody else to deal with eventually. It's very frustrating.
It's all very frustrating. Especially being complicit, also frustrating.
Listen.
Not a fan. Not a fan. Don't care for it. Ugh.
I love to the reminder. Stannis is like, get me some food, boiled eggs and lemon water. And I'm like, sir, you have got to learn how to live. What on the fucking planet Earth? This is like, one of those people that is whip thin and does marathons for fun, and food is fuel. And I'm just like, what is that like to live that way? Where you're just genuinely like, I'm just out here like being an ascetic because I like it. Really?
I'm only
why
for fuel? Ugh.
Yeah, I don't get it. Sounds fake, but okay. There's one or two more mentions too of like the Sir Too Fat to Sit a Horse, who is the dude that they keep calling on from White Harbor, who is the one that has beheaded Davos. And like Stannis is apparently still trying to get him on his side here because we've backed up and that beheading has not yet taken place. So he's still in talks with him, and they're even like, maybe we could lure him by giving him Val as a wife. And this is when we have to do the whole song and dance again about how that's not how that works.
And also, what does Jon say? And he actually is as fat as everybody says, and there's no way Val would fuck him. So,
yes.
If you did make her marry him, she'd probably murder him the first night.
Yeah, he's like, this isn't how you don't make her do shit because she will just kill him. That is how it will be handled. Which good for you. Good for you, Val.
Yeah, Stannis is really his lack of understanding these people, and his seemingly has no desire to gain a better understanding of them, which is odd to me because, like him or not, it's always been presented that Stannis is like, smarter than this, I think. Or I assumed he was. Like, I assumed he was smarter than this. And yet he just seems like a different fucking person, which is maybe on purpose.
I feel like it's like, it just depends very much on what you consider intelligence. And I would agree with you that being able to see from other people's points of view and having this sort of adaptability is part of being intelligent. So I think that maybe he isn't as intelligent as we want him to be. Because he just does not know like how to
book smart.
I don't recall if it's ever mentioned that he's like exceptional in that way.
I may have just superimposed a lot of characteristics on him based on like the way that the three brothers were described. So you got like handsome, boyish charm, Renly, and then you have strong, mannish Robert, and then you have like stern, and I just sort of made up bookish Stannis, probably because of the grammar correction. Maybe that's where I'm getting it from. Maybe that's all I'm basing it on.
I love that. I mean, yeah, I don't really think so. I get what you mean, though, that you would take that and kind of turn it into a thing. I think that's just meant to illustrate what a fucking like pedantic person he is. It's not necessarily intelligence. It's another demonstration of how inflexible he is. But that's just my interpretation of that.
Yeah, I definitely created some sort of like backstory for Stannis that might not actually be accurate.
I forgot too when Jon is like, I'm Lord Commander because they chose me. He's like, oh yeah, and there are a lot of people who are sort of weirded out by the fact that the guy who counted the votes was a blind man, and your buddy was the one standing directly next to him when you did the count. It does seem fishy as hell, dude. And Janos Slynt and Alistair Thorne both say that you are a turncloak. And Jon's like, would a turncloak just straight up stand here and tell you to fuck off? No, I'm not doing any of this. No, they would tell you what you want to hear, and then they would do what they're going to do. Yeah. That is not how I am approaching this. I feel like it speaks for itself.
Stannis also threatens Jon like Loki. He's like, oh, you're the 198th Lord Commander. I wonder what the 199th would have to say about my offer. That's not like he leads into this whole thing. Like, we can just fucking get rid of you, though, and then just whoever your replacement is will probably work with me much better than you are. Like, give me a reason to not have you killed.
I guess this lends credence to your interpretation of it just being like a threat of force. And not like, I'll tell them that they have a new Lord Commander, but just, I could take your shit over. The way that he talks here points to that. So I think you're right.
Well, I like when that happens.
So Melisandre then is like, can I escort him back to his room? And I love him being like, he knows where his room is, and then just goes, oh, fucking whatever, just go.
That was so good. That was so good. It was so unexpected because I was like, what is she asking? Like, what? And then have for Stannis to be like, bitch, what? I had a nice giggle, a very nice giggle.
And she says, this is when she says, His Grace is growing fond of you. I can tell. He only threatened to behead me twice. It's his silences you should fear, not his words. It may be that you are not wrong about the Wildling King. I shall pray for the Lord of Light to send me guidance. And she talks about being able to see things, and he's like, are you ever wrong? Or are the flames ever wrong? And she says, the flames are never wrong, but we are just people interpreting, and we can get that shit very wrong. So I appreciated that admission.
I did too. I love the way she phrased it too. She was like, sometimes it can be, we'll make a mistake and think that this must come when really it's this may come. And I like that a lot too. And then she puts her arm through his arm, so they're walking like arm in arm. And Jon is just, everybody is like watching them. Jon is like, oh, they're gonna be talking shit tonight.
Yes, and they will too. So she says, I fear I make you uneasy. The wall is no place for a woman. You are wrong. I have dreamed of your wall. And she talks about how intense the spells were laid here to protect them. And says, you also have a lot of enemies. Do you want to know who they are? And he's like, nah, I know who they are. And she's like, do you? Because I feel like you've got a real specific idea, and the ones you know about aren't the ones that you should be concerned about, which I have to agree with. Like, if you know who they are, you're already on your guard. Like, if she's got some names, maybe you just want to hear her out real quick for a second.
I don't know why. I mean, I guess he's saying no because he doesn't want to get like wrapped up in this foolishness and wants to keep himself separate from Melisandre and Stannis, and you know. But yeah, I'm gonna need those names.
Right.
I don't know what he's doing here. I don't know what he's thinking. You better get those fucking names. What?
You would do well to keep your wolf close beside you. Ice, I see, and daggers in the dark, blood frozen red and hard, and naked steel. It was very cold. It is always cold on the wall. You think so? I know so, my lady. Then you know nothing, Jon Snow, she whispered. And that's the end of the chapter.
Yeah, she hit him with a little something, something. And so maybe that'll pique his interest, and maybe he will ask her about the names. I like too that we're reminded that the cold of the wall doesn't seem to have that much of an effect on her.
Yes,
because he's trying to tell her that you're going to want to put a couple layers on when you walk me outside. She's just like, nah, I'm fine. It's really not a big deal.
Yeah, he describes how like Ygritte was touched by fire, but the Red Woman was fire. I like that distinction. She carries her own heat that's sort of unsettling. So that's it.
Man.
That's the end of the chapter.
Yeah. So first 4 chapters, and we've got Tyrion and a Daenerys and a Jon, and the prologue, but really that doesn't count. As far as like main characters that we were checking back in on. So,
Yes.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we don't get a Sam in this. I mean, we could, because we're up at the wall, and we know Sam's there for a little while before they get on the road, so we may get like one. And who else do we have to see? I guess we'll get a Bran chapter, right? I should be seeing him soon. I don't know about an Iron Islands chapter, but maybe Theon. Haven't had a Theon chapter in forever, which I've kind of enjoyed, but that, like, that's the thing though, right? I don't know how far into that whole thing the books got. I know you told me that the show really went like hard in that because they needed to fill space for the actor. So
Right.
I don't know if I'm going to get a chapter with Theon and Reek, or if we get like a POV. I can't imagine a Ramsay POV. That would be disturbing. I don't think I want that. I don't think I want that at all. So maybe we get like a Theon / Reek POV in this book. Because I don't remember if that started yet. I know we had Ramsay pretending to be Reek at the last time, like, but that was ages ago. I feel like,
that at this point, yeah, that was a long time ago.
So I don't know where we are with that. I'm just trying to think of who else we might see. And I know there's a million characters that I'm forgetting, so I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's off the top of my head, I'm thinking Bran. And who else did I say?
I literally forgot already.
Maybe a Davos POV.
Ooh, okay, yeah.
Because we're back in time now, so maybe we can see what's going on with him But yeah, I'm really excited about this. I have trepidation. We discussed all that already, but I am excited to read this book.
Yay!
I'm just not excited to get in.
Listen. All right, you guys know what time it is. Hey! So, we have got this week new patrons: Joe Clinet, Dusty, and Eponamunches. I'm so sorry on that one. I do not know how to say that because it's not a name. I think it's just like a username sort of thing. So I reserve the right to mispronounce it. But I did my best. But thank you all so much for becoming patrons and supporting the show. It's really, really appreciated in these lean times for many of us. And if you are interested in becoming a patron and supporting the show, you can go to patreon.com/unspoiled. If you'd like to just follow the show and get updates on what we're doing and you don't have the money to support us financially, you can still do that on Patreon now with the free membership option. It's so funny, you guys. I'm part of the Patreon Ambassador Program, which is a collection of people who are particularly like successful with Patreon that they have reached out to in order to get feedback on new features and the way certain things work. And I have been very happy with a lot of the changes made recently. And then I sign into the Ambassador Program Discord, and everybody hates so much of the things that I like.
Yeah,
and
a lot of people do not like this
startling.
Update. A lot of people do not like this. I don't know.
You're talking about the app, but I'm talking more about like the features on the creator side.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? And one of the things is the creation of becoming a free member, where you can just follow us and be able to like get these info updates, but not financially like contribute. I really like it because I find it difficult to communicate with everybody with social media being dominated by algorithms now. So feeds don't show you what's happening. But apparently a lot of people feel that they would be getting more patrons if they like paid patrons, if the like free option were not there.
they're not getting content,
I don't particularly
though, right?
agree with. That's the thing. Like, you can choose what they see, so I don't really understand the issue. People aren't choosing, oh, I'll be free instead of paid, even though I was going to be paid, because I still get the stuff. No, you can choose that they don't get the stuff. So I'm just kind of confused by that. Not trying to throw shade to anybody, because probably if I talked to them, I'd be like, oh, okay. But it's just, I am particularly pleased with this development. And so when I went in going like, oh, I bet everybody's going to like this, I was just really blindsided by how many people were going, this is idiotic. And I was like, what? Oh, people get real mean because you get in your feelings about stuff that's like your livelihood, you know? I don't blame them for that. But anyway, so yeah, if you would like to just follow along and get, you know, updates about when we're about to go live for certain things, or a new project that we're starting, or whatever, that is the place to be. Patreon.com/unspoiled. I keep saying that I'm going to upload the Avatar The Last Airbender to that feed, or to that website, because it would be better overall for me to get off of my own website. And if you have noticed, I haven't done that yet. It's because it looked like I was going to have to price every episode at $3 a piece, which is far more expensive than what I was charging on my own website. But I have gotten in touch with Patreon, and they have shown me a way to upload those files all together as a zip file, so I can charge for the whole playlist. So I am going to be doing that instead of individual episodes. I will be uploading the whole playlist for $15 on Patreon. So you don't have to be a patron to purchase that from Patreon. So if you already have a payment method that's like in with that website, and you would prefer doing that than going to my website, which I do understand, that is going to be up, I think, this week. I'm going to try and make that a priority. And I think that's about everything. So, guys, yesterday recording the Hunger Games, I noticed how much I say so, and it has been absolutely killing me all recording. Somebody, please do not, if you stop and like go, I'm going to count how many times she says so. Don't tell me. Don't tell me how many times I say so. I don't want to know. I know it's bad. I'm going to brainstorm some alternate words that I can just have up on my screen, so that when I'm in a panic about to say so, I'll have something to look at to be like, additionally, and just kind of dig myself out of that. Exactly. Moreover.
Next up.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We love you very much. Until next time. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Joffrey, Cersei, Walder Frey, Daenerys and Jon, Tywin Lannister.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.